Chapter 4, the people and their leaders did not acknowledge God, and where God is not acknowledged, sin runs rampant. Verse 1 says there is no faithfulness, no kindness, no knowledge of God. And in verse 2, it lists the sins. In fact, 5 of the 10 commandments listed. Remember the 10 commandments. The first 4 is relationship with God, and the other 6 details relationship with people. When we don't acknowledge God, we lose love for others. Verses 4 through 9, the priests are guilty because they failed to teach God's word to the people, and their underlying motive was greed. Verses 11 through 14, the priests were no different from the people. The people's guilt was that they worshiped false gods, engaged in cult prostitution, all because they lacked truth, mercy, and rejected the knowledge of God. Now I'm going to compare what Hosea is saying here to what we have in the New Testament in Romans chapter 1. If you have time, read Romans chapter 1. I'm going to compare a few verses here, but Hosea 4:6 reads, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because you have rejected knowledge, I also will reject you from being my priests." Now, when we fail to acknowledge God, or even worse, depart from Him after knowing Him, sin runs rampant and there are consequences. Israel was even more guilty than the Gentiles because they had been given more knowledge of God, but they had rejected it. Paul says in Romans that even those who don't have the knowledge of God are without excuse because everyone has creation. God has revealed himself through creation, and the created world points us to God, but we suppress that truth and prefer to put ourselves in the place of God. We worship creation, not the creator, but God is distinct from the rest of creation. Nature is not God. God made nature. What the Israelites were doing was worshiping creation. They practiced cult prostitution in order to have good crops. Well, we're no different. We're spiritual harlots. We worship planets and stars, the universe, worshiping creation. God existed before he made anything else. Our story starts with a person. Genesis 1 verse 1. In the beginning, God. He is a personal being. He has a name, but we suppress the truth and fail to acknowledge him. That's what Romans 1:21 reads. For although they knew God, they neither glorified him as God nor gave thanks to him, but their thinking became futile and their foolish hearts were darkened. Wow. Hosea 4:7 reads, "The more they multiplied, the more they sinned against me." Now Romans 1:22 says, although they claimed to be wise, they became fools. So when we suppress the truth, we become thankless to God, which causes us to be unwise and prideful. Hosea 4:7, I'm finishing the verse. "I will change their glory into shame." That glory is the glory of God. It's referring to the glory of God. Romans 1:23 says, "And exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images made to look like a mortal human being and birds and animals and reptiles." So we exchange the glory of God for idols. That's what Romans 1:23 reads. Hosea 4:12. "My people consult their wooden idols, and their diviner's wand informs them. For a spirit of harlotry has led them astray, and they have played the harlot, departing from their God." Well, Romans 1 verses 24, through 27, it lists all of our idolatry and sexual immorality. In fact, Hosea verse 14, it talks about sensual pleasures. It robbed them of their senses, leaving them without understanding. And that's exactly what Romans 1:28 reads. It says, furthermore, just as they did not think it worthwhile to retain the knowledge of God, so God gave them over to a depraved mind so that they do what ought not to be done. Wow. So fascinating. I have an acronym on your screen. It spells out stupid, because when we suppress the truth of God, we fail to acknowledge Him. We become unwise and prideful, and that leads to idolatry and immorality, and our minds become depraved. Stupid. We become stupid. Romans 1:31 is so powerful. It reads, they have no understanding, no fidelity, no love, no mercy. That sounds a lot like what we're reading here in Hosea. Now, the rest of Hosea, verses 15 through 19, which is the end of the chapter, it is a warning to Judah. Don't be like Israel. Flee idolatry. And that's the same warning we have in Romans chapter 1. Flee idolatry. Don't be stupid.